Let's dive right into one of the biggest, most profound questions there is. What is reality, really? Today, we're going to explore how two fields that seem worlds apart, we're talking ancient Indian philosophy and the cutting edge of modern physics, might actually be telling us a very similar and pretty startling story about consciousness and the universe.
You know, science is incredible at explaining the how of the brain, right? How neurons fire, how electricity zips around, but it hits a total brick wall when it comes to the why. Why does all that electrical and chemical activity feel like something? Why do you have an inner experience of seeing the color red or feeling happy? The philosopher David Chalmers famously called this the hard problem of consciousness. And it's this giant, mysterious gap between the physical brain and the feeling of being alive.
So, to try and get our heads around this mystery, we're going to look for clues in two places you might not expect. First, we'll journey back to ancient India, and then we're going to leap forward to the genuinely strange world of modern physics and see if these two paths actually lead to the same place. Okay, so here's the plan for our little investigation today. We'll start with the big questions, then check out this ancient map of consciousness. After that, we'll dive headfirst into modern physics, see where these ideas might converge, throw in a very important word of caution, and hopefully end up with a whole new way of looking at things.
All right, our first stop takes us to ancient India to explore one of its most sophisticated philosophical systems, Advaita Vedanta. Now, the core idea here is something called non-duality, which is really just a fancy way of saying that at the most fundamental level, there's no real separation between anything.
The cornerstone of this entire philosophy is a concept called Brahman. Now, try not to think of Brahman as a thing. It's more like the fundamental field of pure consciousness that everything else comes from. So, in this view, consciousness isn't something your brain makes, it's the other way around. The universe, your brain, all of it, it's all just a ripple, a vibration in this one universal field.
Okay, so you're probably thinking, wait a minute. If everything is just one unified field, why do I see a world full of separate stuff, like a chair, a tree, another person? Well, that's where the idea of Maya comes in. Maya doesn't mean the world isn't real. It means our perception of it as a collection of separate individual things is an illusion, a kind of cosmic filter that hides the deeper underlying unity of Brahman.
And this leads us to the most mind-bending claim of all, that your individual consciousness, what they call Atman, your true self, is not separate from that universal consciousness, Brahman. They're one and the same. The whole feeling of being a small, isolated self is actually part of that illusion of Maya. Think about it this way. You aren't just a tiny part in the universe, you are the universe experiencing itself from your unique point of view.
Okay, deep breath. We're going to jump from ancient philosophy straight into the bizarre world of modern physics. Because over the last 100 years or so, quantum mechanics has shown us a universe that is every bit as strange, every bit as counterintuitive as anything we've just talked about. It has completely shattered our old, common-sense view of how the world works.
Take quantum entanglement, for example. Einstein himself famously called it spooky action at a distance, and for good reason. You can link two particles so their fates are forever tied together. Let's say one spins up, the other has to spin down. The wild part? You can separate them by billions of miles, and the instant you measure one, the other one instantly knows what to do. It's like they're still one system, completely ignoring the space between them. It really makes you wonder if separation is even a real thing at this fundamental level.
And just when you thought it couldn't get any stranger, it does. There's an idea in theoretical physics called the holographic principle. It suggests that this solid, three-dimensional reality we all experience might actually be a projection, like a hologram. The idea is that all the information that makes up you, me, and everything we see could be encoded on a distant two-dimensional surface at the edge of the universe. Our 3D world could just be the readout.
And you know, this kind of radical thinking isn't new in physics. Listen to this quote from Erwin Schrödinger. Yeah, that Schrödinger, one of the founding fathers of quantum mechanics. He was deeply interested in this stuff and wrote, "The total number of minds in the universe is one." He believed consciousness was a singularity, a single awareness that just looks different from each of our perspectives. That's a pretty heavy statement coming from a Nobel Prize-winning physicist.
All right, this is the moment we've been building up to. We've got our philosophical map from ancient India on one hand, and these truly mind-bending discoveries from modern physics on the other. So, what happens when we lay them on top of each other? Let's see where they might converge.
And this is where it gets really interesting. The parallels are just striking. On the physics side, you have quantum field theory, which says the universe is made of fundamental fields and particles are just little vibrations in those fields.
Well, that sounds a lot like Brahman, doesn't it? A single, unified field that everything manifests from. Then you have non-locality, that spooky action at a distance, which suggests separation is an illusion. That is the core teaching of Advaita's non-duality. And the holographic principle, this idea of a projected reality, it's an incredible echo of the concept of Maya.
You know, there's this ancient Sanskrit phrase that just nails this whole idea perfectly. As is the microcosm, so is the macrocosm. It's this beautiful idea that the patterns of the individual reflect the patterns of the entire universe, a principle that seems to pop up in both of these very different worldviews.
Okay, now this is all incredibly fascinating, but we need to pump the brakes for just a second. It is absolutely crucial that we're clear about what we're doing here, and, more importantly, what we're not doing. This is where we need to maintain some critical distance.
So let's be super clear. What we are looking at are parallels in thinking, conceptual resonances. This is not scientific proof of Vedanta, not by a long shot. Science and spiritual philosophy are two very different tools, with very different goals and very different methods for getting there.
And these differences are huge, right? Science uses math to make testable predictions about the physical world. Vedanta uses self-inquiry to achieve spiritual liberation. Quantum weirdness happens at the teeny-tiny subatomic level, while Advaita's claims are about the nature of all reality at every scale. They're just built on different foundations, and it's really important to respect that.
So, after all those warnings, you might be asking, well, what's the point then? Why even have this conversation? What can we actually take away from putting these two very different perspectives side by side? Well, here's the big takeaway, the really powerful thing. Both our most cutting-edge science and one of our most ancient and profound philosophies are pointing in the same direction. They're both telling us that our basic common-sense idea of a world made up of separate, independent objects is probably wrong. And that's the thought I want to leave you with. If our best science and our deepest wisdom are both seriously questioning whether separation is real, what does that actually mean about our connection to each other, about our connection to the universe itself? What if the feeling of being an isolated me is the biggest illusion of all? That's a question worth pondering.